By the beginning of the 20th century, the Northern Territory was Australia's last colonial frontier. The rest of the country had been effectively conquered by European settlement in the years since the beginning of colonisation. Akin to the American frontier, the Northern Territory's harsh conditions and sparse population kept the environment relatively untamed. This granted surviving Aboriginal groups a small pocket of land that remained less hostile than the growing cities along the eastern coastline. But even the Wild West was in its death throes by the turn of the century, and like its American counterpart, this frontier was rapidly closing. Cattle farmers had begun to establish stations in the region, which required access to permanent water sources. The already barren environment was hardly plentiful in waterholes, leading to conflict as Aboriginal groups were pushed off their land so it could be fenced and marked as property. Near universally, the spaces that Aboriginal people had occupied were also the spaces most ideal for farmland. Driven from the waterholes which they had occupied for generations, these people were inevitably forced to move further into the outback. But by 1928, the region was experiencing the fourth year of its harshest drought on record. As the few waterholes that weren't now owned dried up, Aboriginal people were again forced to return to these cattle stations, spearing livestock and stealing water in order to survive. Tensions between white and Aboriginal people were at their highest by early August, when 61-year-old station hand Frederick Brooks was found dead. His body was discovered just a week after he had left Coniston to try his hand at dingo hunting, the corpse dismembered and stuffed into a rabbit burrow. Little is known about the cause of his death, but the presence of Walpiri and Matura and Kaiditch people in the region convinced local authorities the perpetrators must be Aboriginal. Constable William George Murray was sent to Coniston on the 11th to investigate complaints of cattle spearing. On discovery of the murder, Murray was told by the government resident to deal with the Aboriginal people as he saw fit. Now, Murray held post as Chief Protector of Aborigines, a position that essentially placed him as the mediator in conflicts like this. Really, he should be the man for the job, finding the cause for the murder and arresting those responsible. Right? If only. Murray's investigation was outwardly corrupt from the very beginning, so much so that if I were to give a full rundown, this video would easily triple in length. While at Coniston, Murray supposedly obtained the names of 20 accomplices to the murder. This was noted in his journal, though the names of any of these people were never recorded. Murray organised a posse consisting of 7 locals before venturing out to track down Brooks's killer. In reality, there is little evidence to suggest that Murray had any intention of playing detective, as the results of his investigation were the deaths of countless innocent Aboriginal people. Later dubbed the Coniston Massacre, the killings that Murray's group perpetrated are the last known state-sanctioned murder of Aboriginal people in Australia. Over the span of 2 months, Murray's posse went on a series of punitive expeditions, killing Aboriginal people indiscriminately. In numerous cases, they approached a camp and ordered its members to surrender. When this wasn't immediately followed because the group didn't speak English, Murray's posse would open fire. This strategy was repeated at least 4 times, with other Indigenous people dying from exposure after arrest, or in one case a man by the name of Woolongar was shot and beaten before being chained to a tree for 18 hours. By the time Murray had returned, he had died from his wounds. By October, Murray was back in Alice Springs and wrote his official report on the investigation. The document is only 26 words. He wrote, "Incidents occurred on expedition with William John Morton. Unfortunately, drastic action had to be taken and resulted in a number of male natives being shot." By January of the following year, a board of inquiry was organised to decide if Murray's actions were justified. Its 3 members were hand-picked by state powers to maximise damage control, Murray's immediate superior being one of them. After just 19 days, the board came to its conclusion. During Murray's expedition, 31 Aboriginal people had been killed, and in each case the death was justified. This was already a highly dubious notion, but the board had to cover up the reason for Brooks's killing also. In the face of overwhelming evidence to the contrary, the hearing declared that there had been no drought in Central Australia, evidence of ample native food and water supplies, and therefore no reason for violence from Aboriginal people. The media reported on these events with little more investigative effort than Murray. Murray himself was fully exonerated of his crimes and remained with the Northern Territory Police for another 20 years. He died a free man in 1976 at the age of 91, his grave marked with an Honourable Anzac Veterans plaque. Alright, so what? As horrible and unjust this event might be, it's hardly exceptional in Australian history. Massacres like this number in their hundreds and were prevalent in all parts of the country. Why is Coniston so special? And yeah, it isn't. Coniston is not exceptional because the vast majority of massacres in this part of our history went down exactly the same way. Like other massacres, the death toll of Coniston is contested. The figure I told you before was just 31, which isn't accurate by any measure. It's a number government officials decide on in order to best cover up the massacre without drawing unnecessary attention. Aboriginal elders place that number as high as 200, and geological evidence suggests that they're far closer in that estimate. The problem I see here is that this part of Australia's history is so often overlooked. Most Australians know little to nothing about the massacres of the Frontier Wars, which is awful because it has undeniably shaped how this country functions today. Despite our desires to portray this land as a haven for equality, racial injustice continues to thrive as generational trauma goes unchecked and untreated. Many Aboriginal people are starting life at a deficit to their white counterparts, and this has historically held true since first contact. In all likelihood, Brooks was killed by Aboriginal people. It was likely spurred on by the drastic conditions, but we cannot definitively say who did it or why. Had this investigation been conducted accordingly, maybe we would have that answer. I can't say for sure, but I am certain that Murray's actions only resulted in unspeakable harm to Indigenous communities, another scar added to Australia's dark history. If we're ever going to create a fair country, we need to understand our history. The Coniston Massacre was just 93 years ago. It was the same year that women got equal suffrage in the UK that Mickey Mouse hit the screen. It may not be lived history for most, but it is recent history. If we want to make reparations, we need to tell these stories, not from the writings of those that perpetrated these killings, but from the descendants of the victims. In the case of Coniston, there are still a handful of survivors. They were children when it happened and nearing 100 now, but it's not too late for their accounts. As time goes on and more of this history is swept away, we lose our ability to hear these stories. Now, it's the time to stop talking and listen.